This time, the scandalous side of Marseille, France's only European champions.
And it's no nay never, no nay never, no more, 'cause I'll stay a while over forever and more. And it's no nay never, no nay never, no more, 'cause I'll stay a while over forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt to decide once and for all who is the greatest football team of all time. Sometimes, like seeing Trevor Brooking embody gentlemanly conduct, greatness is assured. Other times, like when George Graham accepts that unsolicited gift, a different greatness awaits. My name's Graham Dunn, a Darmy for any Oxford United references, and joining me as ever is my fellow self-appointed arbiter of football greatness, Jamie Rooney.
Hello, hello. How are you, Graham?
Yeah, good. It was interesting. I was trying to think of, and I think Trevor Brooking was the original player who would get no bookings or anything like that. I was trying to think of a way of summing it up, and when I came up with gentlemanly conduct, nobody says gentlemanly conduct. It's only ungentlemanly conduct, isn't it? There's no. I don't want to drift too much into football cliches territory here, but I think gentlemanly conduct is nice touch. You know, that's the kind of quality of it. There's never any. You don't get gentlemanly conduct. It is only ungentlemanly conduct. Surely,
it's a good observation, and definitely Gary Lineker falls into the gentlemanly conduct bracket because he famously never got booked in his whole career.
Yes, it's impressive. It's impressive. Last week. Oh, before I do that, I should introduce our guest this. Sorry, I'm completely bypassing. I should welcome to the pod. Last time Shane was on the pod for us, he joined us to talk through the fantastic Zaire 1974 story, one of my favourite ones. And there was an Australian team in there. I kind of forgot. I can't even remember who that is. But welcoming back this week, Shane Giuliani, Giuliano or Giuliani? It's as in root.
Giuliano. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I look forward to yet again devaluing this podcast.
Well, I mean, Shane, you'll have been, as a Liverpool fan, you'll have been sorry to miss last week's Man United treble-winning special, which, by the way, was me and 3 Man United fans in the room.
Graham, who do you support? I've never actually asked.
Oxford.
Well, I mean, so in other words, like me, you'll be skipping your own podcast after that one, having to listen to Man U's treble. I mean, it pains me to say they're a pretty good team. There was a couple of exceptions in there, but it was a very good team. And they play great football. So, I mean, that hurts. I think that's enough for me.
Jamie, last week on the pod, you came up with this degrees of difficulty concept.
Yeah, I need to trademark it because I don't think anyone's done this in the football statistical world before. So I think I've stumbled across some absolute genius statistic in terms of determining the difficulty of particular competitions. And for Manchester United, we have the FA Cup, a degree of difficulty. And I've changed my percentage to a score. And the score is based out of 1,000. And Manchester United's degree of difficulty in winning the FA Cup in 98-99 was 875. I mean, that is a high score. That's a very high score. And that's based on the opponents they would have faced and the quality of the opponents they would have faced in order to win that tournament. And to contrast that, we had the brilliant Jamie Wilson on it talking about Portsmouth. We had him a couple of times. He's always brilliant. And we talked about his brilliant Portsmouth team that won the FA Cup in 2008. Harry Redknapp's great triumph. Portsmouth's degree of difficulty in winning the FA Cup was 167. I mean, it's apples and pears.
Do you know what? I was going to rubbish your system, but now you said that, I quite like that. I'll be mentioning that to Jamie. Yeah, Shane, I was listening back to the pod, and it was like when you get a politician comes on in the morning and they blitz you with these numbers. If you look at the seasonally adjusted figures, you'll find actually it's 10% above 209 levels. And I listened back to it, and Jamie goes, well, there's this degree of difficulty concept. Man United, that great team, was 68%, and Manchester City were only 45%, and that tells you everything. And everyone nodded along. I nodded along as if it was something.
Well, what I want to know as well is, so obviously the higher the number, the more difficult.
Yes.
Because I'd love to put the two squads up next to each other, and I'm pretty sure Man U's going to have a hell of a lot better players than that Portsmouth team did. And that Portsmouth team were based on retirees, if I remember correctly. Was Patrick Berger still there at the time?
Patrick Berger.
Hobbling on half a leg out of two?
Patrick Berger, John Aloisi, I think, was there around about.
I think the degree of difficulty for Portsmouth should have been about 999.
I will stress the score is based on the degree of difficulty of your opponent. So it's not what you've got in your basket, it's what your basket is up against. And as you can remember, Shane, Portsmouth on that FA Cup run, I think they played 4 non-league teams and a championship winning team to get to the final.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. But, I mean, I think there needs to be some adjustment equation for just how good your squad was at the time. So, you know, if Man U had 9 internationals, I don't really care who you come against, you've got 9 internationals in your squad.
I think, Jamie, what we've proved is under the Giuliano Dunn method, it is absolutely clear that Man United had a Giuliano Dunn ranking of 12.3 inches and Portsmouth were a good 7.5 foot.
Correct, indeed.
I will take 12.3 inches very happily.
So Jay, I don't know why I went down that route. During that, we were also talking about that memorable Clive Tilsley commentary from the final itself, and I think Jamie, you want to sort of follow up on that a bit.
Yeah, Dave brought it up, and it's genius. I do love how these commentators, I mean, they come prepared clearly, and they have incredible notes, as Rick had the Clive Tilsley notes from that particular final. But they do respond in the moment, and they're able to just weave these incredible words. It's a tapestry in terms of how they can just describe things in the moment. And Clive Tilsley, as Dave mentioned, when United hit the corner in the 91st minute, can Manchester United score? They always score. And then they score, and he follows up immediately with name on the trophy. And the thing is, we forgot to mention, when Solskjaer scores just 90 seconds later from another corner, he then follows that up as soon as the ball hits the net, and Solskjaer has won it. It's just incredible how he is able to just kind of weave those words in that particular moment. And it describes it. I mean, it's so succinct, but it's so beautiful at the same time. And we've covered a few of these on the podcast. I mean, you had a very, very good stab at doing the Martin Tyler Aguero. And we've also talked through the wonderful Norwegian commentator when they beat England in 1981, referring to Magi Faccia, your boys took one hell of a beating. So I think there's real pleasure in listening to these guys work their arts and crafts watching football matches.
Oh, absolutely. And I also enjoy the ones when it goes wrong. Say, almost every South American game where they've lost. Very entertaining. It's like a bomb's just exploded somewhere in the booth. And there's tears, and you know full well that they are not going home very early that evening.
I kind of miss the days of David Coleman. 1-0.
Brief and to the point.
Excellent. Well, that's enough nonsense. We should get on to this week's team, and it's a fascinating one. We're going to be talking about. We will be going into the great story of Olympique Marseille. So this Marseille side is pretty special, and it's most famed, obviously, as technically the first winners of the European Champions League in its current formation. And to this date, and who knows how much longer, France's only winners of the tournament. But Jamie, the story goes back really a few years before that, doesn't it?
Yeah, the story begins with Bernard Tapie, the Marseille president. So he acquires Marseille in 1986 when they're struggling. They haven't really won anything for, I think, about 10 years, since the mid-70s. They are struggling to stay in Ligue 1, around the relegation spot. And Bernard Tapie has a reputation. He's built his fortune on buying companies that have been struggling, almost in financial difficulties, and he's turned them around. And most famously, he's done this with Adidas. He acquired Adidas in 1990, bought it for about 1.5 billion French francs. And then later, when he put it on the stock market in 1995, it was valued around 11 billion French francs. So he has a reputation of being able to turn bad things into good things. And that's exactly what he was able to do with Marseille. And he came with a single goal that he wanted to build the greatest football team in Europe.
And he's already involved in sports, isn't he?
He is, yeah. Another sport that's close to me. He had a cycling team. So he was responsible for, I think it's called La Vie Claire. They did health products. And then from that, he then organized a cycling team. They got into the world tour. They raced in lots of the classics, lots in the major races, lots of the major tours, and they won the Tour de France twice. They acquired Bernard Tapie, who's a very famous cyclist, won 5 Tour de France, and with him they won the Tour de France in 85, and they also defended the title with Greg LeMond the following year in 86. So Bernard Tapie has got a history in terms of being able to build things from nothing, which is exactly what he did with the cycling team. So the guy's got a knack for success.
Midas touch.
Got some experience working in a sport which is has maybe got the odd scandal attached to it, which maybe comes in handy in what's to come. What about Olympique Marseille? What's that kind of football heritage like at this point?
Marseille are the second most successful team in French football after PSG. They've been winning trophies pretty much most decades since they were formed in 1899. And yeah, they've got potted history. They've won titles, they've won cups through their history. And when Bernard Tapie acquires them, they are seen as one of the biggest and best in terms of heritage teams in France, but they're not doing particularly well at this particular point in their history.
And I suppose him acquiring it is also, I don't know, it's not quite like Abramovich taking over at Chelsea, but his acquisition brings some money behind it and some investment behind it, doesn't it?
He's a successful businessman. He's made millions in terms of turning businesses around. So he's able to find the means to invest heavily into this football team. And he certainly does acquire some of the world's best footballers in his time there.
Also with managers as well. That's where it sort of begins.
He gives Gerard Guillet his first start in management. So Gerard Guillet is a former Marseille player, and he gives him the job to run the first team. He goes on, and in his very first season, he wins the double for Marseille. So he wins the league and the cup, something that not many managers have done. Shane will be very close to one particular manager that has done this in the past, and that's Kenny Dalglish. Very first role as manager at Liverpool, he won the double in 85-86. I think he took over from Joe Fagan. So winning the double in your first season is no mean feat, although Pep had to go and beat everyone.
Do we now need to give a minute's silence for the great one, or do we just sit there and continue on?
Yeah, you can be as silent as you like on that one.
When did he start buying the players? Because I know in 92, 93, he tore the squad down and restarted again with some superstars.
Yeah, I mean, he was looking to kind of recruit the best players. Eric Cantona famously was at Marseille for a short time, fell out with the coach, something that Eric Cantona doesn't do very often. Wasn't meant to be for him at Marseille.
I mean, they had some super footballers, and half of the footballers that were in 92, 93 went to France 98 and won a World Cup.
Yeah, he really does acquire some of the greatest talent of its time. You know, Jean-Pierre Papin is one of the best players that I think French football has ever produced.
One of his first signings is Alain Giresse, isn't it? Or Mr. Finesse, as I think he was known.
Really?
Mr. Finesse,
Very
Alain
nice.
Giresse. I'm not sure it really works, and probably doesn't with a French accent. But and Karl-Heinz Forster, I think, were among the first signings that joined. And it does start, as Shane says, it starts a stream of top quality players that come through the door. Obviously, it's not unusual to have the best teams in France to have some of the best French players, although actually quite a lot of them would play abroad. But quite unusual perhaps to be bringing in players from elsewhere in Europe.
Yeah, we must remember that the free foreign player rule, as it was called back then, was in place. And what that meant was that as a domestic team, you could only play on any match day 3 players that were outside your boundaries of the country you played in. So 3 non-French players could only play in any given match day squad.
It didn't have effect AC Milan in one of the finals that either Hullet or Rijkaard couldn't play, and they played Papan instead. Actually, he was on the bench on one of the games.
Yeah, the final in '93, Marseille win the European Cup. So Fabio Capello was the manager then. He'd taken over from Arrigo Scacchi. I don't think Capello liked Hullet. He was the one that brought in Papan as a number 10. And he brought in Papan when they had in their team, in terms of, it was crazy because, I mean, we're drifting into Milan for the right reasons. So, I mean, he'd had Van Basten, Hullet, Rijkaard, Xavier Boban, Brian Laudrup, Florian Radicchio, who I think Harry Redknapp likes, all could play in the number 10 position and were all foreign players, yet they still went and poached Marseille's best player to bring him in. And then you're right, Shane, in the final, Capello's left with a choice. Rijkaard and Van Basten are starting, and the third foreign player that he chooses to use is Jean-Pierre Papin, and he puts him on the bench. And Hullet doesn't even get a start in that famous final.
The players that Marseille had for 92-93, I mean, Alan Boxick's pretty decent. Rudy Voller's fantastic. Rafael Vasquez played for Spain for years. They're pretty good players. I mean, you've attracted some pretty good talent.
Adele Pele as well, the famous father of the Ayew brothers. He was a very, very special player as well, a Ballon d'Or winner, I think.
I think that's probably the thing, isn't it, Jamie? That this Marseille team is kind of, whilst the whole period is bookmarked and bookended by bookended, isn't it? I think bookmarked is something else. Bookended by Bernard Tapie. It's sort of more than one team, isn't it? Because they build that initial team, and the team under Gillet is successful, but it's not successful enough. As we've seen before, who knows when a sporting director comes in who might be quite high profile, which doesn't work. It must be about the time that Gérard Houllier came in to work with Roy Evans. There's a sort of, no, he's fine. He's just going to do some signings and help out a little bit. Don't worry about him. And at Marseille, that happens, obviously, because they bring Franz Beckenbauer.
Gérard Guillet has won 2 championships already in his first 2 seasons with Marseille. It's his first job as a manager, and he's won 2 league titles, and he also won a cup. And for reasons I'm unable to really explain, other than the fact that Beckenbauer was probably a massive personality at that time and looking to move into more like kind of the technical director role, I think more than the football coach. Beckenbauer, having won the World Cup with West Germany, is recruited and comes in the 92-93 season. So that ticks off Guillet. He feels he's being undermined, so he just packs his bags and leaves Beckenbauer to pick up the pieces. And then Beckenbauer doesn't really work out as a coach. I mean, I'm kind of conflicted with Beckenbauer. He's an absolute football legend. He's won the World Cup as a player and a coach, so clearly he's got an impressive CV. But I don't know, it feels like that whole kind of Zinedine Zidane thing. You know, he's won 3 European Cups, but is he really that good, or has he just been in the right place at the right time? Maybe I'm being a bit unfair, but Beckenbauer didn't last long as a coach at Marseille, and he's replaced by an incredible character, Raymond Goethals.
And I think we're going to spend a bit of time on Goethals, that's definitely. But during this period, despite changing the coaches, Marseille just win, don't they? They keep winning the league. I think they win four in a row. It doesn't seem to make any difference to the output of the team.
They're dominating French football, and they're doing well in European football as well. And, you know, we're talking about the team. They've got one of our own, I'd like to think, in it as well, in Chris Waddle, who's gone out to Marseille. Part of the players that moved from English football when English football was unable to compete in Europe, and been a massive success in France.
So let's talk about Goethals, because he is absolutely integral in it. And he's not a figure that I knew. You know, on the Wikipedia page, you're right at the bottom. He's been to around 20 clubs for this. He's managed for 20 years. He's in sort of the real end of his career, but he's had quite a career as a manager.
Yeah, he's a bit like Branko Zabic, who we talked about, the great Hamburg team, Kevin Keegan's Hamburg. Just one of these coaches that falls under the radar. And I think he falls under the radar because his Marseille team is attached to scandal, and it wasn't his first brush with scandal, because Raymond Goethals was in charge of Standard Liège in 1982 in the Belgium League, and in the final game of the season, they can win the league. He encourages his players to maybe offer their win bonuses to their opponent. So there's a theme being built here.
There's definitely a theme emerging that let's perhaps encourage the opposition not to go easy on us so that no one gets injured for our important European Cup final the following a few days later. A thing which isn't to recur at any point.
If we go back a little bit more, I mean, Raymond Goethals, the Belgian coach, I think does deserve to be seen as one of the greatest coaches of all time, and he is kind of brushed under the carpet. I mean, this is a what-if moment. He is in charge of Belgium during the 1972-73 World Cup qualification campaign for West Germany in 1974. They're drawn in the same group as the Netherlands. Belgium do not lose a game. They draw their 2 games of the Netherlands. They beat Norway, they beat Iceland, both games. They don't even concede a goal in the group, and they finished second to the Netherlands. However, in the final game against the Netherlands, when Goethals' team has been pretty much defending deep, and Shane, there's a theme with that as well coming with the Marseille team.
Oh yeah, you look at that squad. Let's have another defender. When in doubt, buy a defender. Put on a defensive midfielder. Have a sweeper. Defend.
The themes are there right through. But Belgium score in the 89th minute. They score in the last kick of the game. And if you watch the goal on YouTube, and camera angles aren't brilliant, it's not offside, but it's given offside. And as a consequence, Belgium don't go to the World Cup finals. The Netherlands do. We all know about Netherlands in 1974. An incredible football history what-if moment that the linesman and the referee did allow the goal, which looks like they should have. Then the Netherlands don't go to West Germany. Belgium do go, and football history is being rewritten.
He's a fascinating character, as you say. Particularly entertaining because he had several the various write-ups. He had a few different nicknames, and he was also likened to TV detective Columbo. I like to think that his style of management would be, he gives the team talk and goes over to talk to the opposition manager, and when he said, just one more thing, you're going to be playing that lad at fullback. Well, I just thought he was. I think this.
I'm impressed with how many teams he's managed. I mean, he's managed, and it's not like he just stayed in Europe. I mean, he went to Sao Paulo in the middle of his career. He went to Guimarães in the middle of his career. I mean, he's been everywhere. It's a man who just wanted to work. Clearly,
like I say, he's quite genuinely been. I think he's had something like a dozen jobs before he gets to Marseille in 1990. I mean, his first management job is 1957.
He's Roy Hodgson, but with a lot of black hair dye.
Yes.
He takes over at Marseille. Is he in charge for their first European Cup final?
No, he's not. So 91, which we shouldn't brush over because that's a really interesting part of the Marseille history. He's not in charge. Gerard Guillet is still the coach in the 91 final.
And so they get to the final 1991 and they play Red Star Belgrade, one of the greatest names in football history, without a doubt. The final is decided on penalties, and that must have been one of the first European Cup finals to be decided on pens, wasn't it? When did Liverpool? Was it? That must have been was that Liverpool?
Roma. Yeah, Liverpool-Roma 84. I think that's right, Shane, isn't it?
I think it is.
Bruce Grobbelaar.
To be fair, I'm just having a look at the final Red Star Belgrade Marseille, and you would not believe it. It was 0-0. I'm sure there was 7 or 8 defenders on the pitch at the time. And we're just talking about Marseille squad.
It's a pretty dull affair. Just a couple of stats for you, just to kind of flavour the competition. In 120 minutes, both teams managed to have 13 shots. Now, that's not 13 shots on goal. That's 13 shots in total, which is a shot every 9 minutes. And there's only 48 tackles in the whole of the 128 minutes. So there's only a tackle going in on average every 2.5 minutes. So you can probably build a picture of what type of game that was.
Wow.
Definitely so. They come close. And of course, as we've discussed, and we discussed it on the Saint Etienne episode, Marseille are at the point of potentially making history for French football, becoming the first French champion European Cup winners, as it was at the time. But they don't do it. They're defeated on penalties. And that, I think, adds to Bernard Tapie's resolve to go one better and to further build that squad.
There's a couple of things that happen that are really significant for what happens in 92-93. The first one and least controversial one is that in the quarterfinal, and this is where we need to be tipping our hat to Marseille, they play AC Milan. And this is Arrigo Sacchi's AC Milan. This is a fantastic team. This is where Van Basten, Gullit and Rijkaard were winning the first 3 positions in the Ballon d'Or pretty much every year. And in the quarterfinals, coincidentally, they have a relationship already that we've mentioned. Ruud Gullit scores for Milan, Jean-Pierre Papin scores for Marseille, and it finishes 1-1. There's a bit of history that follows these guys into 93 as well. In the second leg, Marseille take a lead through Chris Waddle late in the game. And then it's classic backs to the wall stuff for Marseille in that game. And deep into stoppage time, when they're under pressure, 2 of the 4 floodlights at the Stade de France in Marseille fail. They go out. And the game is shrouded in darkness. So the referee at the time, the Swedish guy, Bo Carlson, takes the players off, doesn't bring them back on for 15 minutes until the floodlights have been turned on. Now, how or why the floodlights are turned off, I mean, make up your own story. You may want to put an allegedly.
I'm loving this team. Back in the 80s and 90s, there's an old AFL team, St Kilda, and they were unbelievably bad. And every single time that you'd play at St Kilda, which is a regional ground, mystically they'd play against the best team, whether it be Carlton or Hawthorn, and you'd go there in the middle of winter, but it's been a really dry winter, and mystically someone's accidentally left the sprinklers on and made it a quagmire to make sure that the game is very, very talentless. Accidents do happen, gentlemen. That's all I'm saying. Accidents do happen.
And Shane, I think you're right. I think the 2 floodlights that fell is a genuine accident. But what happens next?
Genuine accident.
It's quite telling because Adriano Giuliani, the AC Milan president, refuses, once the referee has said we can resume play and finish the last few moments, he refuses his team to come back onto the pitch. He's like, no, we're not coming back onto the pitch. Some suggest that he was doing this to get the game replayed. So AC Milan have a full 90 minutes to try and get through to the semi-final. But if that was the case, it backfired because his actions have a direct consequence. UEFA then ban the president from football for a year. They annul the game and give it to Marseille as a 3-0 win. Chris Waddle loses his Champions League or his European Cup goal. It doesn't count any longer. One of those weird anomalies in football. And Marseille are given a 3-0 win and they advance to the semi-finals 3-1, which is incredible. But there's something else that happens. The second point, Marseille going into the final against Red Star Belgrade, they suffer some injuries in the league for key players shortly before they go into the final against Red Star Belgrade. And this sticks with Bernard Tapie, I think. I think he's really struck by this. They've lost key players going into the biggest game where they become European champions. And they lose on penalties, as we mentioned, to Red Star Belgrade in a highly entertaining football match. And the loss of these players in a league game sticks with Tapie for sure.
Which is sort of understandable when you've had an experience like that. I expect Spurs don't have Lasagna on the eve of crucial London derby matches anymore. Once you've been scarred once by something, it would be hanging around there. So we then sort of spool forward to 2 years later when they reached the Champions League final again for a second time. Now, that side, as Shane's mentioned, it is sort of almost totally different, isn't it? It gets completely overhauled.
And it's a good overhaul, by the way. It's worth noting it's not the worst overhaul you've ever seen. When you start pulling in international players from different countries of that quality and World Cup winners like Rudi Voller, you're doing okay. He's clearly decided enough's enough. I don't ever want to have to turn the lights off again. As a result, I'm going to buy my way into a Champions League final. To be fair, it's not going to be the first owner that's tried to buy his way into a Champions League final. AC Milan only have, 3 of the best Dutch players that have played in the last 40 years. Real Madrid have a lovely history of it. It's not like Barcelona didn't do it in the 80s and 90s. Liverpool did it. Every team's done it. So as soon as you have the ability for a checkbook, last time I checked, Dalglish wasn't born in Liverpool.
I suppose the other thing about it is the strength of the defenders in that team and the defensive players in that side are really something, aren't they?
This is, Jamie, where you need to mention the sweeper thing. That's ridiculous, isn't it?
I love the idea of a sweeper. And having played football with Graham, I know that he loves the idea of a sweeper because I think he now sees that as his perfect position. A sweeper is one of those positions that I don't think we're ever going to see again. And I know things come in cycles and shapes and formations and styles do come back. But I don't know. We're used to seeing three at the back, but we're not used to seeing three at the back where one of them has license to just kind of roam. And we're talking about Baze Boli. So Boli is playing as the sweeper and this powerful, huge presence, famously known for giving Stuart Pearce an absolute seeing over. And there's not many players that can boast that fact. On either side of him, he's got Master Deteli and Jocelyn Ongoma. I mean, it's land of the giants. It really is.
And in front of him, the guy that created the only defensive midfield with nothing else going forward. Apparently, he was nicknamed the water carrier by Cantona because he goes, well, you're only here to pass to someone with more talent anyway. Brutal. Sadly true. I did watch him for that 1 year at Chelsea, and he's going sideways. He's just going to cut in front of the defenders, and that's pretty much all he's going to do. And then he'll 2.5 yard pass and go, job done, next. But to be fair, he created the whole defensive, and I mean pure defensive midfielder. You know, Claude Makelele, pure defensive midfielder.
Yeah, I mean, Deschamps was just, remarkably solid. And, I think probably when you sort of brought up on British football, there really was no kind of defensive midfielder, holding midfielder, Then Deschamps played in a different way, I think, to the way the Italians had kind of brought that role up as well.
Well, I mean, let's face it, the Italians sprayed the ball a little bit more than Deschamps. Deschamps really was like what Gattuso ended up being at Milan. He was a terror. He was a terrier at your feet. He had an engine, and he was clever, so he knew exactly where to be to stop the passes going forward, which is exactly what Makelele did, who's one of my favourite footballers, and just on the basis of, at the time, anyone who's got an attacking team needs it. Ironically, I wouldn't have said this is the most attacking side I've ever seen, but you just look at it and you go, tactical awareness is worth gold. As a Liverpool supporter, I watched Trent Alexander-Arnold, which is the polar opposite to tactical awareness. So, you sit there and you go, I quite appreciate tactical awareness.
We'll kind of come on to the French league part, which obviously ends up playing quite an integral part of this story as well. But the other thing that I think is really interesting about this is the first Champions League in its, I won't say current format because it changes format every few years. But since the graduation from European Cup to European Champions League, the format they opt for on this one is quite strange, isn't it, Jamie?
We're still in an era where only the champions of the country qualify for what has been rebranded as the Champions League. So it really is Ronseal paint. It is what it says on the tin. And the way that they manage this particular version, the first one, 92-93, the first Champions League, is they have a preliminary round where it's for the lower ranked UEFA teams to get into the first round. They then have a first round, which is over 2 legs, a straight knockout. They have a second round, which is the same. And then they go into 2 groups of 4, where the top 2 teams from Pool A and Pool B win and go through to meet in a final. So it's really streamlined.
It definitely is. And the point you make about it's still being open to champions only, so you only have 1 club from each country, and also means that you have those initial qualifying games. But it means by the time you get to the last 8, you don't need too many upsets to have happened along the way, or in fact, upsets in the previous season. The last 8 has a really unusual and unfamiliar ring to it. If we were today to predict the last 8 in this year's Champions League, almost in any season, it's going to be...
You're going to get 4 of the 8, right, aren't you, at least? Just as an average. You get 4 of the 8.
I agree, yeah.
And even the 1 or 2 surprise packets, and Atletico Madrid. Well, it's not really a surprise packet, mate. They've got about 400 million worth of players on the pitch at any one time. Do you know what I mean? It's not like you're terrible. Or a PSV Eindhoven or something like that. You go, hey, you're not the worst team on the planet.
You have the 2 groups. In one group, you've got Milan, which is understandable, and Gothenburg, Porto, and PSV Eindhoven, all sort of well-known names, all with a rich heritage of Europe, but it's been a while since Gothenburg, Porto, and PSV done a great deal. And then the other one, Marseille, Rangers, Bruges, and CSKA Moscow. No Barca, no Juve, no Real Madrid, no Bayern Munich, no Liverpool, no Man United. Now that, of course, as a minor sideline, takes us to, in one of the qualifying rounds, we had, I think, Jamie, it was called the Battle of Britain, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Second round. Leeds United Rangers. At the time, Leeds United were the champions of England. Harold Wilkinson's Leeds United, and they drew Rangers in the second round. And it was a massive buzz, because we have to remember this is the first time that an English team has played in the Champions League since 1985. That fateful time in Belgium, the Heysel disaster. They did have a qualification in 1990, but Liverpool were the champions, and Liverpool had an additional year's ban, so they weren't eligible to play in the Champions League when English teams did come back. So Leeds United were the first team, and there's a real buzz. You know how English football can get carried away with itself and suffer delusions of grandeur, and I think at this particular period, it was suffering those giddy heights of delusions of grandeur. And Rangers had been, during this period, a strong team. Graham Souness had built a strong team through the 80s. Rangers were regularly qualifying for the Champions League. I think they did 9 championships in a row. They were getting players like Gascoigne and Trevor Steven and Mark Haitley were all going to Glasgow Rangers. So this was a very good Rangers team. And Rangers themselves, who finished second in the group with Marseille, came within 1 goal of qualifying for the final itself in this particular period.
It was a super strong Rangers side, and I suppose that is, when we talk about unfamiliarity of it, is that not only was it an unfamiliar last day, but, if it wasn't Marseille in the final, it would have been Rangers, which would have been extraordinary.
I think a footnote on AC Milan, because obviously Marseille go to the final and they face AC Milan. And I think because we're here to judge the greatness of this Marseille team, and the pinnacle being winning the Champions League in 92-93, and they're up against, the time, Fabio Capello's AC Milan. Now, AC Milan had cruised through to the final. They had played 10 games in the Champions League at this point, and they'd won 10 games. They'd scored 23 goals, and they'd conceded 1 goal, a consolation from Romario for PSV in the group stages. So Milan were on a march. And just to kind of demonstrate how good this Milan team was, that in Serie A in that particular season, they went top on week 1, and they stayed top for the whole season. This is how strong this team was. And you've got Maldini, Baresi, Costacurta, Lentini, that famous guy who was a world record transfer at the time. Yeah, absolutely. Donadoni.
I mean, my God, they're pretty good.
Yeah, they were.
Couldn't even get in the squad.
No, but as you mentioned, I don't think Capello liked him. I think Capello had a problem with Ruud Gullit.
He must have had a problem with talent then, because he's pretty good. To be fair, Capello did have a history of falling out with certain players that he just didn't like the style of.
I have to share this story, a personal story. I was in, it was Regent Street, and I went into the clothing store, Uniqlo, and I was just scouting around. And then just out of the corner of my eye, I saw this guy just fiddling around with some of the flannel shirts, looking them up and down. And I looked across and I'm like, oh, that's Fabio Capello. What are the odds of seeing Fabio Capello in Uniqlo looking at flannel shirts? And I couldn't resist myself. I'm not really a starstruck individual, but I just went up to him and I just approached him. I said, Mr. Capello, thank you so much for what you did for England. It's probably not always appreciated, but I do appreciate what you did. And it was bizarre because he then looked at me, and I don't know what was going on in his head, but he looked at me as if I was one of his former players, and he couldn't remember which former player I was. And he's trying to think, at what club did I have this player? I recognise him, but I don't remember him. And I don't know if he was thinking that. And I just went to him, I said, no, Mr. McKellar, you don't know me. I'm just a fan. I just wanted to share some of my star appreciation. And it was a bizarre moment. And I kind of thought, probably reflects the reality of Fabio Capello.
He's probably sitting there going, did I sell you? I may have.
That is great. I'll share this one, and you can always edit it out as it is an Oxford United reference. But I bumped into Richard Hill, who was an Oxford United player. But I did this it was in Australia in 1990 World Cup. Because of the time zone in Australia, I don't need to tell you this, Shane, it's quite difficult to tournaments in Europe a bit. And so it's Italian 90. I'd stayed up all night to watch one of the England games. It might have been the Belgium David Platt goal, I think, which had gone into extra time. And I was there, and I had my Oxford United shirt on for the occasion. we'd booked to go on this tour, like to Rottnest Island on the next day. And
Yes,
I
I
was
know
getting
it.
the ferry across there. And Richard Hill, who played for Oxford the previous, Richard Hill was on the ferry. And I went up to him, and I don't know who was more surprised, me to see an Oxford United footballer in Australia, or Richard Hill to see an Oxford United fan wearing an Oxford United shirt.
I don't know whether he would have been surprised to see you in Australia or just an Oxford United supporter at all.
Well, very much so. I do remember his words, which were, "What are you doing here?" Well, yes, but anyway, that's a distraction. This kind of sets the story up. So Marseille have got to the final of the Champions League. At the same time, they're faring well in the Liga, but not well enough to have won it by a distance or by a country mile. And this, of course, is where what Jamie pointed out earlier, the previous experience comes in. So they have to get a victory against Valencians, not a team I'm familiar
Valenciennes,
with.
Yeah, it's critical, see. And the European Cup really comes into this because it's week 36. And you're absolutely right. It's a nail-biting championship run-in. PSG are right on Marseille's coattails. They're just a couple of points off. Monaco are just a few points off as well. And it's back in the area when it's 2 points for a win in the league. And the game is played on the 20th of May. And 6 days after that is the European Cup final against AC Milan. So the motivation for this is for his players, Bernard Tapie, his players, not to get injured. So obviously the league is tight and they do face PSG the following week. So there is a chance where they can win the league in that game. They're PSG at home. But I think the motivation is more about protecting his players going into the Champions League rather than trying to win a fifth league title.
And for everyone out there who's about to listen to this podcast at some stage, prepare to be entertained. It is a peach.
Yeah, Jamie, I think you should probably take us through this. The story by which both the idea is struck and then the execution of it, which isn't fantastic.
So Marseille are playing Valenciennes away from home in week 36, 6 days before they go into the Champions League final to face AC Milan, a competition that Bernard Tapie is desperate for his Marseille players to win. It's the holy grail for him. So I think being scarred from what happened in 91, he doesn't want to get any players, critical players, injured for this game. He has a chat with one of the players. I think he and the president, they collude this idea that they've got a player in their ranks called Jean-Jacques Edelet, who had played with Georges Burchaga and Christopher Robert at Nantes. And now Christopher Robert and Georges Barashaga, the Argentinian player that played in the 86 World Cup final, he kind of suggests to Edelet that maybe he should offer these guys to take it easy against us. But there's also a third in this. So Jacques Glassman also played at Nantes with Edelet. So whilst Edelet speaks with the three players about potentially taking a bribe, I think we're on safe ground by saying it is a bribe because this has been proven in court and people have paid their penalty for it. Georges Barashaga and Christophe Robert are up for it, and I think they're going to gain somewhere around about the equivalent of about £35,000, £40,000. A lot of money for those guys back then. That's a few good holidays down the coast in Monaco for sure. But Jacques Glassman he's appalled by the idea. He's absolutely gone principled on this. And not only is he not going to participate, but he's going to do his damnedest to make sure that Marseille don't win this football game. While Christophe Robert, who gets injured in the 25th minute and has to go off, and Georges Barashaga do take the foot off the pedal. And Barashaga is fascinating because he has a reputation for being a bit of a beast. He's one of those players that just keeps whining in the referee's ear. And the referees know him. They expect it. They turn up every weekend in the French league and it's oh, bloody hell, it's Barashaga again. I'm going to be in for it again. Exactly that, Shane. And strangely enough, the referee at the time, Jean-Michel Vinel, he actually remarked after the game, it's like, it was something odd because Barashaga wasn't complaining. And in fact, on occasions, he was actually supporting me, telling his players to say, no, the referee's right. We have to accept these decisions. So even the referee is thinking, this is a bit weird. So something weird is taking place in this game.
Brilliant. And how do they get caught?
Well, they get to half time, don't they? And at half time, it starts to unwind a little bit there, doesn't it?
Yeah, Marseille are 1-0 up. Alan Busic has scored in the 21st minute. So Marseille have what they need. They just need to protect their lead, but crucially protect their players. And I think that is the motivation. I don't think it's about not losing this
Protecting
football.
the league should be easy when you've got 9 defenders, 2 central defensive midfielders, and no desire whatsoever to score again. So they should be okay with that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. They should be on safe ground. So the guy who's gone principled on this, Glassman, he starts telling everyone in the changing room what's been going on. He starts grassing up his mate, Edele. He starts pointing the finger at Barachaga and Robert and saying that bloody Marseille, they're paying us to blow this game.
Brilliant.
So then during the second half, he mentions it to the ref as well, or mentions that something's happened. So he's really, I mean, it does feel to me, if you are going to instruct your players to prize, I mean, you need to make sure they are all on board. One person out is definitely a problem. Well, Marseille win the game. They win the game 1-0, but almost immediately after the game, the whole investigation into that begins, doesn't it?
It's incredibly swift. I mean, Marseille still have a Champions League finals to play. They still have to finish Ligue 1, win the league, which they do. But within a matter of weeks, the story has been exposed. And just one of the things that's brilliant about this is Christopher Robet, obviously, he's taken a pile of cash. And we can only use our imagination that pile of cash is in a brown envelope. And clearly he doesn't want to be, he's going to be savvy to know that something's going on, right? Because Glassman's grassed him up. So he has to hide the cash. And he buries it in his aunt's garden. It's absolutely brilliant. It's American made. It's Tom Cruise all over. It's absolutely fantastic.
And the beautiful thing as well is obviously in an unsurprising turn of events, Christophe Robert and Barachaga are no longer a Valencian the year after, but Glassman is, which is the way it should be. So there you go. A bit of a clear out at Valencia and that straight afterwards. It's well worth noting any story that involves 3 words, brown paper bag, is excellent, but you throw in an auntie, gold. Absolute gold right there. It's a fabulous story. It's just brilliant. It's brilliant that after he doesn't accept the bribe, he then destroys his own team.
What's interesting about it is we made the link to Goethals at Standard Liège a decade earlier, having been involved in something. But there's no suggestion he's involved in this, is there?
No, none at all. And that's the bizarre thing. And, you can only use your imagination and probably have to be careful about how you use it verbally. Has he kind of been sowing this idea, the seed of this idea, slowly but surely into Tape's head, subtly just making references? So, Bernard Tapie comes up with this brilliant idea himself, but all along, Goethals just been poking the bear slowly to get him there.
Well, I mean, you could do it other ways as well. You could just sit there and say, guys, any injuries, I'm not going to renew your contract next year because I need a fully fit team. You do that, you've already morally pushed someone into a corner that's pretty difficult. The reason I find the moral high ground so fascinating is being an Australian cricket supporter. There wasn't a lot of moral high ground in the South African change rooms when we had the sandpaper gate. So it's nice to see someone doing it.
Or even running out English wicketkeepers when they just happen to go for a wonder.
There are a number of scandals littered through the history of football in terms of what people have done, been accused of done, or potentially have done through rumours. But there's not many examples where somebody has just kind of gone on that moral high ground that you mentioned and come out and just exposed the whole thing. And there are so many risks with that. But we should mention that it's a credit to Jacques Glassman because he goes on and he wins the FIFA Fair Play Award as well. I mean, he's getting pats on the back from top dog Sepp Blatter, for that he's being commended so highly for his actions. I mean, there's an irony right there, right?
The FIFA Fair Play Award sounds more brown envelope than what was happening. I mean, it's not sort of ideal preparation. 6 days later, Marseille do have to play this Champions League final against Milan, this brilliant Milan side. We sort of alluded to it. There's some defensive prowess really comes into its own, doesn't it?
Did say he was probably at the start of his career, I would have thought, in 92, 93, wasn't he? Because after that, he went to AC Milan, didn't he?
Yeah, he would have gone to Milan very next season, I think, actually. But yeah, he was a youngster. I mean, in goal as well. We haven't even talked about the goalkeeper. There's a 21-year-old fledgling goalkeeper called Fabian Barthez. He's actually got hair as well. It's fascinating looking at, because I only remember Fabian Barthez with a shiny head with Laurent Blanc kissing it. Yeah,
Yep.
but if you look at the pictures of Fabian Barthez in this particular game, he's young. He's 21 and he's got a full head of hair, albeit thinning fast.
Well, there was quite a few that left after this year because the Italian teams came knocking. Boxic left, Desailly left, Deschamps left pretty soon because he went to Juve, I think.
So they were convicted of match fixing. The Valenciennes scandal was proven. Clearly, you've got the smoking gun in Glassman telling everyone what's been going on. So the evidence was damning and they got stripped of their league title. The league title was actually offered to Paris Saint-Germain, and on principle, they said, no, we don't want it. So they didn't take it. And then the French football was scrambling for somebody to put into the Champions League the following year because Marseille weren't allowed to enter because of the scandal, albeit there was nothing proven in Europe about any scandal. Now, there are suggestions in some of the games, but nothing was proven that anything was done wrong. And Marseille's title in '93 in Europe is valid and stands. But they were still stripped of European football. And then they were relegated to Ligue 2, I think is the right pronunciation, Graham, because when we had Saint-Etienne the other week and we talked about Ligue 2, it sounded weird when you've got Ligue 1. So I'm correcting my wrongs from previous and saying Ligue 2. So yeah, Shane, you're right. I mean, once Marseille have been relegated and they're in the focus for all of the wrong reasons, even though they're the European champions and the first and only today French European champions, the players start jumping ship.
There's also doping allegations around this time as well, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. And this comes out again.
Story that keeps getting better.
Yeah. I would be intrigued to know your thoughts on whether doping in football actually gives you an advantage. And there's a few occasions where teams have tried this, but there's no obvious advantages because it's a collective sport. It's a team sport. It's not like cycling or athletics. But for Marseille, just to cover your point, Graham, yeah, our same man who was Tapie's into Valenciennes, Edele, in his book in 2006, when it came out, he said that the players were taking some injections. They were taking something before games. And Chris Waddle and Tony Cascarino, who were players for Marseille during that period, I've all testified, yeah, we were getting injected in something. I got a quote from Tony Cascarino. It's brilliant. It's like, to this day, I don't have a clue what it was. The doctor would only tell me it would give me an adrenaline boost, and I never felt inclined to ask for the rest. Whatever it was, my performance improved. I cling to the silver hope that it was nothing illegal. It's just brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, I'll have it, mate. Yeah, no worries.
I mean, we can skip to the end of the program. This is my favourite team and the best team. That's it.
I think in those allegations, there's a suggestion that all the players were taking injections except Rudy Voller, who didn't, and presumably that has something to do with his perm. I don't know. Maybe there's kind of it's high performing, but it has a really bad effect if anyone has a perm.
And the moustache is pretty spectacular too.
So Marseille, extraordinary achievement against all these odds to win the Champions League, first and only. But as you say, Jamie, it does not lead to a glorious legacy. I mean, obviously, the team is broken up. Tapie goes. They're not only stripped of the Liga, they are demoted. And, I mean, whilst they've been back, they've never really, ever really returned, have they?
No, they've been lost in the era of Olympique Lyonnais and now very much PSG. Marseille is still, France's second biggest city, massive football city. But yeah, they haven't really returned to the greatness of this particular period where they were winning league championships and qualifying for European Cup finals. And Bruno Tapie himself never returned to football. And I mean, this is just a mark of the character. This guy is fascinating. I find him extreme. I mean, not only has he made incredible successes turning dead businesses around, he's run cycling teams, he's run Adidas, and we shouldn't forget Adidas were going into receivership when he took them over. Adidas is like one of the biggest clothing brands in the world right now. And Tapie is responsible for turning that company around.
Good with the distressed asset.
He certainly is. But then his resolve and his talent to turn himself, or his confidence to turn himself to anything, is seen afterwards because he's not allowed to run businesses anymore because of the scandal. Business ventures have been banned. He tries to become a politician and then through whatever means is unable to become a politician. That gets banned. So he gets this knockback. So in 1995, he decides to become an actor. He stars in a film, Homme Femme d'Emblée, which means Men, Women, a User Guide. And he plays, this is brilliant. I mean, we talk about 6 degrees of separation. Here's 1 degree of separation of Bernard Tapie to Daniel Craig, James Bond, Daniel Craig. In this film, Man, Woman, a User Guide, in Bernard Tapie's acting debut, he plays the character Benoit Blanc, who is a failed businessman with stomach problems. Benoit Blanc, for you movie buffs out there, is the name of Daniel Craig's character in Knives Out.
That's fantastic. I love that.
It's starting to become one of my favourite stories. It's got everything. Drama.
He also, just to complete the picture, he also becomes a songwriter. He also goes on to star in theatre productions. And here's another 1 degree of separation with Jack Nicholson. He then goes and stars in the theatre show of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and he plays Randall McMurphy.
Wow.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Fascinating character. Sadly, we lost him a couple of years ago. He died of stomach cancer at the age 78. So he isn't with us anymore, but a truly fascinating and brilliant character.
And Marseille, they do win the Ligue 1 again one more time, or have done since then in 2009, 2010. But it leaves them tantalisingly behind our friends at Saint Etienne in terms of Ligue 1 titles, and now behind PSG. There's a couple of European finals appearances, but never again really, or not again. They've not hit the dizzy heights in the Champions League again, have they?
Marseille have qualified for the Champions League, but they've never ventured deep into the tournament since those giddy heights.
But I mean, the one thing that the Marseille story has taught, if anything, is if you're going to try and bribe someone, pick 3 people that'll play along. Because quite frankly, one of the big errors was picking the one Boy Scout in the first place, going, well, that's backfired.
So we should get to placing Marseille in their ranking for greatness. As a reminder, we have 5 categories of greatness, from all-time greats up at the top, true greats through to touch of greatness, followed by edge of greatness, and then our bottom of the heap category, blink of greats. Let's start with you, Jamie. Where do you put Marseille?
They are European champions, and there may be some doubts about how they got there, but there's nothing improving. So they've won that tournament, and they've knocked out an amazing AC Milan team along the quarterfinals, where it probably felt at the time that AC Milan team was destined to win another European Cup and be the first team to win the Champions League. They've won league titles. They've got a collection of great players. And they are, crucially as well, the first and only team to win the European Cup. And we shouldn't forget that, considering the importance of France's contribution to football. That's quite a staggering statistic. So I think you can't bypass the incredible players in defence, the wonderful sweeper system, Fabien Barthez, fledgling career, and the front 3 of Adele Pele, Rudi Voller, and Alan Bosic. I think that's an amazing front 3. So as much as there's a scandal attached to this team, and without trying to be too scandalous in my ranking, I'm going to put them as true greats, which is our second category.
Shane, what do you reckon?
I'd almost have them as a top category just because of entertainment value alone. There's nothing more entertaining than the whole story is bloody brilliant, right? So they're definitely number 1 on story. The only reason I'd go third category between third and second is longevity. Like, I mean, I loved the Ajax team of, was it 96 or so? That was fantastic. And they were brilliant, but they just got stripped. The moment they were successful, they just got stripped immediately. Yeah, and all their players went for other leagues. So I do like an element of longevity, and they had 3 great years in France and 2 or 3 great Champions League runs, but then Liverpool had a couple of good Champions League runs, and they were awful in the 2000s. So they are a great team. They've also got about 4 guys that won a World Cup in 98. and they've got a German that won a World Cup in, what was it, 90 in Italy in 1990, I think it was. So they've got a pretty good bunch of players. Somewhere between the second and third.
So somewhere between touch of greatness and true greats.
Yes.
Shane, I think you're underestimating them. I mean, they did win the Intertoto Cup in 2005.
You're right. Put them back up to 2. You've sold me.
Well, I think you do raise a good point, Jamie, which is footballing achievements are lost and a bit overshadowed by what happens out on the pitch. And I think it's quite an achievement, regardless of whatever shenanigans have been going on, to go and beat Milan in the final. Fantastic Milan. To win that silverware is extraordinary. But one of the true signs of greatness is the ability to get away with bribery and to do it properly. And 2 out of 3 isn't enough. So footballing terms, I could buy true greatness. In bribery terms, we're definitely talking edge of greatness. So I think we probably have to split the difference between true greats and edge of greatness. And I think we're saying Olympique de Marseille, touch of greatness. We have one last bit of business. We have the opportunity to go back in our time machine to go and look back at any of that Marseille period. Let's start with you, Jamie, on this one. Where would you want to go back?
I'm torn between 2. And the first one is the 91 quarterfinal in Marseille, where Chris Waddle is given the lead and it's a tight game against an incredible Arrigo Sacchi's AC Milan. And then the floodlights go out. Just watching that whole thing unfold, the confusion, the AC Milan president refusing to bring his players out, and this possible ploy backfiring, that would be really interesting. And seeing Chris Waddle play football, I mean, I'd love to see Chris Waddle play football live. Oh my God. But do you know what? There's one other place I think I'd like to be, and that's in the Valenciennes dressing room at half time in that 1-0 game where it's 1-0, where Glassman, who's frustrated by what's been going on in preparation for the game, has exploded and shared his frustration with the changing room. I think a drama like that just would be fantastic to watch unfold.
Shane, what about yourself?
I'm going to go a little bit more left of centre, which is unsurprising for almost anyone listening. I want to be in the backyard of the auntie's house when they dig up the paper bag, and just to watch the player go, it's not mine. They're not my friends. I don't know where they came from. That would be one of the moments at all I'd love to see. And then I'd really also, funnily enough, again, from a football perspective, the lights out, because I'd be giggling, going, this is brilliant. Who came up with this plan? It's ingenious. Yeah, the Valenciennes halftime huddle would be absolutely brilliant. But also, based on the quote that Jamie said on the midfielder about the injections, I'd love to watch him get injected and just mystically go, seems fine to me.
Only Gasparino.
I'd love to sit there and see that and just look at him and go, you don't think this is questionable, mate? No. I know what you're talking about.
I think somebody needs to be there at the scene of their greatest European triumph. So 2005 Intertoto Cup for me. No, I think I will. Someone should go to the final. So I think I'll be our representative. Okay, that is all we have time for this week. Shane, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for again giving me a wonderful topic of entertainment. Appreciated very much.
We tried to pick the most random ones, I think, for you.
You give me 2 absolute blinders. It's made me love football even more, to be fair, Graham. It really has.
Excellent. And thank you, Jamie, again.
Oh, my pleasure. And I think the next time we get Shane on, we probably should think about talking about Argentina 1978. I think he'll lap that one up as well.
Excellent. Well, you'll be welcome back anytime. That's all we have time for. A reminder, you can contact us on our social channels at By Far the Greatest FC, or via myself and Jamie at Said and Done and at Couch Pundito on what most of you still know as Twitter. If you enjoyed listening, a reminder to subscribe to the podcast, and you'll get a new shiny episode every Thursday. And we will speak again soon.